On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very exclusive treat. We're diving deep with an NFL icon who's as multifaceted off the field as he was dominant on it. Hailing from San Diego, he burst onto the scene at the University of Texas, setting records, earning unanimous All-American honors twice, and clinching the coveted Heisman Trophy in 1998. No big deal. His dominance didn't stop there. Drafted fifth overall in the 1999 NFL Draft, he showcased his elite skills with teams like the New Orleans Saints and Miami Dolphins, leaving an undeniable mark on the league. Big facts. But beyond the touchdowns and accolades, his journey is one of introspection and evolution. From his ventures into minor league baseball to his passionate advocacy for holistic healing and cannabis, he's consistently defining conventions. Today, we explore the life of a man who's not just an NFL great, but also a trailblazer in the realms of wellness and entrepreneurship. He's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific human being. Please welcome the dynamic, handsome, authentic, unique, and abundant, the legendary Ricky Williams. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I do good by you with the intro. You feeling nice and elevated?
Yeah. I mean, get to a certain point, you hear so many nice things about yourself. I was thinking about this earlier. To me, it's like greatness has always been kind of the expectation in the sense of that's what you're supposed to do. And so, yeah, we should appreciate and we should acknowledge. But to me, that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. That's a mindset.
It seems obvious to me, but if I take a step outside and realize not everyone sees it that way, then I realize, oh yeah, it's a mindset.
Yeah. Let's just start right there. Let's get deep right out the gate. And I saw you talking about manifesting greatness. And I saw you saying, I thought it was really beautiful that it's more than just a word, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it means something. Words always have this charge. So it's more, but it is more than a word. I was thinking another word for greatness is excellence. No, but these fancy words, what it means is just truly expressing who you are. It's like when you see a rose that when you smell it, you're like, oh, this is a beautiful smelling rose, or you see it and you're like, oh, that's a beautiful rose. It's not the rose doing anything special. It's just expressing its
Beauty.
nature.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all have a nature, right? We're all different. We're all unique, and I think excellence or greatness is just refining and always improving on who we are, on our essence. He
I
talked
love
about authenticity, and I think it it's in my definition of greatness, it's impossible to be great if you're not authentic. You can do great things, but greatness is something when you're in someone's presence, you can't always describe it, but you feel something, something that you actually walk away with, and it sticks with you.
100%. I absolutely love this. And also, first of all, I agree with you in regards to authenticity, because if I'm being honest, for a while I was inauthentic and I was following in the footsteps of other people's expectations. I was on Wall Street for 13 years. I reinvented myself in the pandemic to do what I'm doing now. And I finally got into alignment and showed up as a real version of myself and had a ton of success. And that's really when the world began to see me. Probably not a coincidence. And also, I saw you write that, or you said somewhere along the lines that greatness is where passion and potential meet. So that was really cool.
Yeah. 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 Because and I think a lot of people, when they think potential to be like someone else, you know. But when I think of potential is more of a question of what do you have the potential to become, you know? And I think if it's the things that are typically, our aptitudes, our potential is something we don't recognize because we think, oh, that's just me. And a lot of times when we recognize that other people don't have something as easily as we have, we think, what's wrong with them? We don't tend to think, oh, this must be something unique about me. And so I think that's part of it, is to realize like what you do that's different, right? What you do that people notice. And typically if you do something that people notice and it makes them feel good, it makes you feel good too. And that's what I noticed when I was in the fifth grade, that I could run faster than everyone else, and I realized if I develop this aptitude, if I develop this potential, it could take me places, and maybe sometimes I overdeveloped it to detriment of other things that I could have been developing. But I figured it out later. But what you said, it's not like we're inauthentic. I think authenticity is always a process, because we grew up with being raised by people who didn't have the ability to see into our souls and to see who we actually were. They did the best they could, right, with what they had, but they didn't have the ability to raise us to be authentically ourselves. They were trying to raise a good little boy or a good little girl. And so authenticity is something I think that we have to, one, we have to desire, and two, we have to, at least for most of us, we have to, like, it's a journey. We have to go after, we have to claim it, because it's not easy. There's everything, right? The billboards, everything, right? Social, everything is telling us what we're supposed to be. There's not many things that are encouraging us to be exactly who we are.
I just wrote that down, but that's the most beautiful thing I've heard. And it's something you have to design and showcase and exploit and work on, almost like a muscle, and figure out who you
Yeah.
are, what you like, what lights you up, what has you jazzed, right?
I mean, to me, that's the most valuable information that you can have, because then you realize if you have a sense of the things that make you feel good, right? Then you always have a choice to feel good. It's always there for you. It's always there for you if you want it.
I think that people, when they think of you, I think a couple of things come to mind. Number one of the most talented running backs ever, and number two, probably word is misunderstood. But you just kind of helped me really understand, just from this brief conversation so far. And like, you left football kind of earlier than people might have expected, but you wanted to pursue what really lit you up and what had you jazzed. And that not only takes courage, but that's probably the most authentic thing that you could do.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I see it. I understand other people's perspective because it might not make sense to them. But
Right.
my lived experience is I've always lived my life putting all of myself into things that I was most passionate about. And it was just as shocking to me when I realized that I wasn't as passionate about playing football as I was about traveling and seeing the world and studying religions. Like, that shocked me too. It was a pleasant surprise because it, felt much better to my body and it was more stimulating and more interesting.
Yeah. Ricky, did you love football during your
Of
prime?
course.
Yeah.
It's like I said, even the idea of love, I can't imagine doing something that was a problem, right? I can't imagine doing something that I don't love. And then outside of the romantic idea of love, if we get more to a scientific definition of love, love means attraction, you know? And there's certain things that we're attracted to, okay? And then certain times that magnetism, that attraction wears off, right? From an evolutionary perspective, we're attracted to things when we need them, and we no longer need them. We need to be not attracted to them. And so I look at my life and I needed football. There's so many things that football taught me, prepared me to do the things that I'm doing now. But it got to the point where I didn't need it anymore. In my imagination, there's a lot of athletes that get to the point where they don't need the sport anymore, but because they put so much into it, they don't know what else to do. And I was fortunate enough that I was, courageous enough and crazy enough to think I can figure it out, So I took a shot.
Yeah, I love it. And a couple of mutual friends have been on the show and become friends of mine, like Edgerrin James and Austin Eckler, and they talk a lot about life after football. I mean, Edge is obviously retired, and Austin's still playing in his prime, so to speak. But football is what you did. It's not who you are, right?
We did it so much that it is a part of who we are. If anyone spent time with me, like really spend time with me, you know, they would know I was a football player, or I did something like that because it's part of me. When you put so much, if you think of what are we built of, we think we're built of our experiences. And so I put so much time and energy to being a football player that even if I wanted to, I could not purge it from I couldn't, I
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to.
fair enough. Yeah. And also, there was a lot of things in football that made you successful that were transferable to the stuff that you're doing now. Because I like
Yeah.
to say, like, what made you successful in a specific endeavor wasn't actually the endeavor, it was you. And a lot of those traits you can transfer to something else.
Mhm. Yeah, it's traits, but I think it's more reps. Kind of what I was saying earlier is becoming more of who we are, and when we're attracted to those things that give us more reps to refine who we actually are, those are the valuable experiences. Because for me, I had a certain level of intensity, and there's very few places on this earth that a big black man can exercise that kind of intensity in a way where I learn how to utilize it. And on the football pitch, on the football field was one of the places that I could learn to do that. I learned to harness all of this energy.
Yeah.
And I think if I didn't have football and a place to do that, I could have gotten myself in a whole lot of trouble.
Fair enough. I know that you played a lot of sports when you were younger, like a lot of them. You even wrestled, played baseball. When you grew up, which one was personally your favorite?
I was a baseball player. That
Yeah.
was I thought I was going to be the right-handed Tony Gwynn. Didn't happen. Didn't work out that way. But yeah, I was a big baseball fan.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. I was listening to a conversation that you had recently, and I think it's very interesting. And then I want to jump around with all the exciting stuff that you're up to now and so forth. And I forgot who you were talking to, but basically about how running backs today, and they're not getting paid as much as other positions. And I think if we're being self-aware, it's, the mindset is most likely because you guys are taking such a pounding, and maybe the shelf life isn't as long per se. It's like Tom Brady playing till he's 45. But
Yeah.
running backs are so important. I mean, like, what can we do to change that narrative? Or what do you think needs to be happening so like guys like Saquon and so forth can get paid what they deserve, what they're earning?
Well, when we say important, they can be important, but if you look at a lot of offensive schemes, there are some offensive schemes where the running back is primary, but most of them, you can kind of put anyone in there and they'll do a good enough job. And so if you think about it, right, if there's a special kind of fish, and that chances are it'll go bad in like 2 or 3 days, and it's twice the price of the other fish, why would you buy it? Unless you knew exactly how to cook that fish up to where it was so good. So I think it's shifted to where
Great analogy.
if you were gonna scheme, and you said Saquon, and I think this is an example, right? He was that special kind of fish that it's worth it. He's a superstar, right? The Giants don't go to the playoffs last year without Saquon. And
Agreed.
so I think there's the running back position, but I also think there's the superstar. And I think if you have a running back that's a superstar, right? Yes, he might get hurt, but it's worth it. You better pay him.
Yeah. What do you think?
And I think also the thinking about running backs is to realize that, running backs have more juice when they're younger, right? Yeah. It's not some positions, right? It's not too brutal. So as you gain more experience and your body's healthy, you hit your peak around the middle end of your career. But running back's not the same, because we might have the mindset, we might understand the game, but our body's not moving the way that it used to because of all the hits we've taken.
Yeah, that's just reality. Real quick off the cuff, I'm a Jets fan. It's been a little bit challenging, but I'm very loyal. What do you think of Breece Hall?
I love watching him. I got a chance to watch him in college a little bit. And he's a hard-nosed runner. And this is what I mean about when a running back becomes a star, where you have this, when a running back takes over a game, okay, it's something that affects everyone. People in the crowd, right? They love the smash mouth. The defense gets up because they get more of a rest. The offensive line gets geeked up because they get to lean on people. A quarterback gets excited because it's third and short, and everyone's afraid of the run, so it's easier to throw the ball. So a time of the past, but you see it come back when a team gets on a roll with the running game.
Yeah, he's talented. He's fun to watch. Yeah. In regards to injuries, Ricky, that's just something that is unavoidable. Even if you're great and you know what you're great at and so forth, just part of life, and it's unpredictable, but it happens often in NFL. You've obviously experienced that yourself. What is the mindset or the mentality? Obviously, the physical rehab, but mentally, what is the mindset required to overcome setbacks in regards to injuries and stuff like that?
I think it's a change. It's a change in mindset. Is that if you stay in the setback mindset, it can be useful, but if you stay in the setback mindset, it's like you're always climbing uphill to try to get back. If you see it as an opportunity, my son he broke a bone in his foot, right in the middle of football season. He was like bummed,
Sure.
And I said, listen, you love sports. And I said, you're going to be playing sports probably for the next 10, 15 years. I said, it's going to be very rare that you have these months of October, November free. So there's things that you'll be able to do right now that you might not be able to do. And so I said, so he started painting a little bit, because he was so busy with practice, he didn't have time to do these other things. And so, right, if we're moving in one direction, and there's something that breaks down, it means that we weren't supposed to be moving in that direction anymore. And I think if we realize, okay, what direction am I supposed to be moving in now, it becomes something we can build on. Because when we look back on our past, right, everything is something that we built on, all of it, right? Regardless of how we felt in the moment, it's something that we built on.
Yeah, beautifully said. And so good to have the awareness, like, all right, so this is on hold for a minute. How can we take advantage of this new space that's been created?
Yeah. Because that's what's there, right? And we can fill the space with, different levels of feeling sorry for ourselves. And again, sometimes there can be motivation to overcome something. But I find, life is short, and every moment is the opportunity to be creative, to interact with something, to open our mind, to become wiser. And so
I agree 100%.
I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense to me. Like in the lockdown, I shut down my office on Wall Street, and because that was shut down, it was what it was for at least 2 weeks. Who knew back then? That's when I shifted my frequency, when I realized I'm here for much more, and what could that be? And because I
Yeah.
put myself in that frequency, I started getting
Yeah.
those downloads, and the rest of the day
Yeah.
is history. So you got to create the
You got
space,
it.
or at least take advantage of it.
Yeah. And there's, we say create the space, but the reality, if we're not creating the space, these kinds of things tend to show up in our life to create the space for us.
Probably not a coincidence, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, I love that. You took a very notable that you took a year off from football. How important was that for you at the time?
It was very important. I've been kind of full speed football player since I was a teenager. And I never really had the space or the time to even ask the question, like, who else is in there? And so that time away, and it was away, I literally started traveling around the world, and I just got away in the wild to have a deeper sense of who I was. And so I got to know myself better, beyond just being a football player. And so it was necessary, I think. Or I think if I hadn't had that year away, I would just be a retired football player right now, because that's all I would have had.
Yeah, and also maybe like you said, like whether you create the space or it happens for you, that gives you an opportunity to kind of look within and figure some things out, whereas you can't figure that out if you're just in the grind going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's funny, like you mentioned the Jets, and
yeah,
I look at things differently, and I wonder if, right, it's easy to say afterwards, but I wonder if Aaron Rodgers decided, hey, I'm gonna take a year off, okay, right? If he, before this season started, he said, I've been a football player since I was a teenager. I got something in the tank, so it's not too late. I want to take a year off and explore different things. Okay. Right. We kind of would be in the same situation, except he probably wouldn't be as upset. You know,
yeah, because that, well, yeah, that would have been on his terms. But it looks like something,
exactly.
I think I'm optimistic something good's going to come out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. It always does, depending on how we respond, right? That's the whole thing. I think that's what people don't realize. And it sounds cliche, but it's real. It's that so it doesn't seem like it, but we always have a choice, right? We always have a choice of, are we just going to keep responding the same way we've always responded? Or we're going to take a chance and respond differently. I had a mentor, and he said, he said, people change their underwear every day, but it's so hard for them to change their minds.
100%. And think about this, like if you can just change your thoughts the way you change your clothes every day, in other words, like if they're negative, which most people's are, but you're aware of it and you can choose a positive thought, put yourself in a better frequency, then you can live a much more creative and abundant life. I think most people get plagued this victim mentality because they
Yeah.
succumb to their negative thoughts.
Well, it's easy to say, but the reality is that actually people don't think about this. It actually requires energy to change a thought. It's not something, oh, you can just write. It actually requires energy, right? And if we're not living a life that gives us energy, we're not ever going to have enough energy to change our thoughts. And so it's kind of like this loop. And for me, it was just to the point where I got to the place where I was like, and I think I busted my ass at so much that I got to the point where I was like, I deserve to be happy.
Yeah.
Right. And I gave myself permission to start choosing things that made me feel better, regardless. I prioritize feeling good. And I feel like almost there's a taboo against that. But I realized if I'm not feeling good, I don't have anything good to give. And if I am feeling good, I'm a kind, loving, generous, positive person. Right. When I'm not feeling bad, right, I don't even want to be around myself. And so I just said, I'm going to start making choices that move me in that direction.
Unbelievable. It's the best feedback there is. What makes you feel good and what or who lowers your frequency a little bit.
Yeah.
And be a little bit more
Yeah.
selective and intentional where you spend your time and give your energy.
Yeah. And more importantly, as you hear us say this, notice all the reasons you have for not doing it, because, right. And to me, right, people come, their reasons for not being happy, their duties are like, I don't try to take them away. I say, as long as you're aware, right? Because then it's a choice. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not choosing happiness because of this. Okay, perfect. As long as you're clear about it.
Yeah.
Don't pretend that you don't have a choice.
That's the key. And the biggest thing for me, when I was in the dark season, I was so invested in this story, this narrative. As a Wall Street guy, I'd always be stressed out and make a certain amount of money and have toxic relationships. When I got quiet in lockdown, the pandemic, it occurred to me that I had a choice. We all have a choice, and I could choose a different narrative and give energy to a different story, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's when everything opened up, Ricky. And I stopped focusing on what could go wrong, and I started doubling down on, but what can go right?
Yeah. So what was it? Was it like, what was it like? Do you remember that moment? Was it like a person? Was it a book? Was it just sitting on the couch? Like, what was that like where you started to like have that shift?
Yeah, so I've been studying personal development for 15 years. I'm just obsessed with it, like Kabbalah, law of attraction, NLP. I can't get enough of it. And I use it to be successful in different endeavors like business, running marathons. I'm running the New York City Marathon in 5 days. I just loved it. I just didn't think I was worthy of turning that into a career. But then I got in a really dark place a few years back because, as it turns out, there's a lot more to success than just making money. And I was totally out of alignment on Wall Street. And a couple things happened at once, and I was just unhappy. And then when the
Yeah.
lockdown happened, I started running marathons. I started to find myself again. And then I did this eulogy exercise where I made it very real for myself. I said, like,
Wow.
if this was it for me and people came to my funeral, what would be said? What kind of impact did I make? What kind of contribution did I make? What kind of legacy did I live? Did I live an authentic life? And I had realized at that moment that I had significantly underachieved in all of them. And so from there, I made it so real that I began to associate death with choosing to go back and be miserable. And because
Yeah.
of that, the fear of stepping into the unknown kind of transformed into excitement. And then I said, well, what do I love? If I didn't have to worry about anything, what would I want to do? What is my purpose? And that's
Yeah.
when it all came to me.
Yeah. It's funny what you just described in astrology, we call that a Pluto transit, you know,
I was going to
meaning
ask
that
you about the astrology stuff.
yeah, meaning that if we look back to the moment, right, to the day, the week that this actually occurred, we would see that the planet Pluto was doing something very significant in your chart. Because that's what you described. So Pluto was Hades, the god of the underworld. And it's these times where thinking about death becomes a powerful teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you just said, if you opened up an astrological textbook and you started reading about Pluto, you would just check the boxes, everything you said.
Do you ever study or work with Kabbalah at all?
Yeah, I've studied most things, not worked with it. I toyed with it. I got relatively deep into Kabbalah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a beautiful system. And the deeper essence of Kabbalah is actually what I study. More general occultism. It's funny language because we don't really have a way. I guess now there's ways we talk about the unconscious, but there's the idea that there's something underneath the surface, that motivates us or that drives us. And the more we can connect to that, that's our real source of power. And the more we try to push it away, it just kind of takes over anyway.
Yeah, so beautiful. And one of the things that we learned in Kabbalah recently was all the astrology stuff and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I was
Yeah.
pumped to ask you about that. For someone listening right now, I'm like, well, what exactly does that mean? Like astrology? What do you teach or what do you learn in that? What would you say?
You learn about yourself, you know. So in if we it's like just a brief history lesson. Okay. So the planets in astrology are named after the gods, and they're named after Roman gods. Before they were named after Roman gods, they were named after Greek gods. Before they were named after Greek gods, they were named after Mesopotamian gods. So the planets have always been named after gods. Okay, that's the first point I like to make. The second point is that we don't live in a religious time anymore. You know, if you say God, kind of people look at you like you're crazy now. We live in more of a psychological time. So we don't think of the planets and astrology as gods anymore. We think of them as psychological drives, psychological urges, you know? And so astrology is a map of those drives or urges that motivate all of us. Here's an example, okay? And it's symbolism, okay? So if we think of when someone says, "What's your sign?" Okay, what they're really saying is when you were born in an astrological chart, where was the sun? All right, the sun, symbolism. The sun is the center of the solar system. Everything revolves around the sun. The sun gives off energy, life, vitality. Okay. We talked about earlier. Sometimes in life we do things that light us up. It gives us energy. It makes us feel more alive. Okay. That's the sun sign. And if you right, so to me, astrology is not like you say someone's a Gemini and it describes who they are, right? It means that when a Gemini is sharing a different perspective, when they're learning something new, they light up, right? You can see I'm a Gemini as I'm talking and I'm getting really into what I'm saying and what I'm conveying, that
Yeah.
it gives me energy and it gives me vitality, right? So, like the dark side, people say Geminis are two-faced. No, 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 no. Geminis are just curious and they're always looking at things from different perspectives. So if you're talking to a Gemini Monday, they're looking at it from one perspective. There's a good chance Tuesday they've turned it so many times, they've looked at it from different ways, so they have a different idea about it. It doesn't mean they're two-faced. It doesn't mean they've changed their mind. It means they're constantly learning and looking at things differently. And so that's just the sun. But in astrology, there's 10 planets. And so it allows us to understand ourselves on a deeper level. We realize, right? Sometimes, right, this makes me excited, okay? But it pisses other people off, right? We realize that we have inner conflicts. Different parts of ourselves bump up against each other. And even if you look at like self-development or growth, all of that is just helping the inner parts of ourselves learn how to get along with each other. I think of it like a symphony, you know, when all parts of us have the same goal and the same aim, everything is working towards each other. You know, like I used to think that I can't be happy at work and have a good relationship, you know. And then I used to think, oh, I need to combine them. And I thought I can't work with my partner. But I realized, right, the more I can have everything in my life support each other, it just works better and I'm happier. So the to me, the beautiful thing about astrology, at least it gives us a model of wholeness. And I think the models that we have, even the psychological model, is one of fracture, right? It's about there's something wrong or there's some kind of disease that needs to be fixed. You look at someone's chart and you say, right, this is a poem like meant to be written. This is a flower meant to bloom, you know. And when I work with people, I help them appreciate that. It's kind of where I get my philosophy from, of realizing is we're all built differently. We all have different potentials. And if we try to force ourselves to be something we're not, we're always going to fail. If we try to be who we actually are, we're always going to succeed, right? There's going to be challenges because there's people and things that are trying to, not support us being our unique self. But the greatest gift we have is to show up, is to be ourselves.
That's unbelievable. And for everybody listening now, run that back, grab a pen and a journal, and again, take some notes. Authenticity is the cheat code, right? And it's not like, for me, I have this marathon on Sunday, but my seventh marathon. It's not so much about the end result. Yes, I want to do well, but it's about the 3 months training, the blood, sweat, and having the courage to sign up and putting myself through it, and the expansion and the grit and stuff. That's really where it is in the journey. And anyone that has the courage, or look, I think it takes guts to be authentic. I wish it didn't, because that there's only one of us. Not even identical twins have the same fingerprints, but all the world really wants is for us to be us. But
Yeah.
for some reason, we're the last ones to follow through on that promise. And I speak from
Yeah.
conscience. It took me 35 years, but better late than never.
Well, we're not supported. And I think it's funny. If you think of all of the manpower and the energy and the resources that have gone into marketing, trying to use psychology to trick people to think that this is going to make them happy, that something outside of them is going to make them happy. So there's been so much energy put into telling us something outside is going to make us happy. There hasn't been enough of resources put into helping us connect to what actually is going to make us happy. And you mentioned me as an entrepreneur, and this has really been the fire in my belly with my main project, Leela. So Leela is an astrology app that gives people hints, clues about how to find out who they really are. So, because to me, like, knowing who you are isn't saying this is who I am. It really starts from curiosity, of being curious about, like, I'm good, sweet boy. What do I love? What am I really passionate about? What upsets me? What makes me laugh? This curiosity about ourselves will give us all the information about what's truly meaning, what works for us and what doesn't.
I think that's such a beautiful word, curious. Everybody should encourage everybody to explore their curiosity. Be curious about life.
Be curious about yourself. You were like, right, you were talking about, we have this fixed idea that, right, if we have a fixed idea about who we are, that eliminates any curiosity we have about who we are. We're only curious about the things that support our fixed idea and the things that might get in the way. That's an abuse of curiosity.
Wow. Yeah. And also, it's funny because I know you talk about mental health and you have a really cool reframe about it. And so you say mental health means that you're trying.
Yeah, exactly what it means. It's because, right, even this idea of like mentally healthy, like who do you know who's mentally healthy, right? It's like, to me, like, I'm not saying health or not health, but the nature of life, right? There's the things that we really want to do in life. There's always things trying to stop us, It's like, even if you think, we have to go back in time a little bit, but if you think of hunger, right? It's like, I'm hungry, right? But in order for me to take care of that hunger, I have to do something, or I have to work, or I have to be really nice to somebody, right? Or I have to cry, or I have to climb a tree, or I have to, right, that I have to do something. And so, I think the nature of life is not about mental health, but it's more about meaningful stress, right? Meaningful disequilibrium, because the nature of the human spirit, it's always seeking that kind of wholeness. And as long as we participate in following those risks that put us on the limb, I think we'll keep moving and we'll keep growing. I think sometimes we get so disconnected from nature that we forget that us, like the universe, is constantly evolving. And at least I've found, the more I lean into that process, it's scary. And again, part of my football training, right? Part of my football training has allowed me to tolerate a certain level of fear and know that it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. And just to be clear, to reiterate, a role model is not somebody who pretends to have all their stuff together when they don't.
Yeah. I think of, even like, right, I think of like when I grew up watching sports, right? The role models for me, right, for better or for worse, was the player, I get beat up. I think of like John Elway, getting beat up and limping back to the huddle, limping, right, and still balling, okay, and still balling, like, right. To me, regardless of how you feel after that, you have the sense of you overcame something and you left it out on the field. So that's my definition of mental health, is that it feels worth it. I think when we're doing things that don't feel good over time and they don't feel worth it, right, it like drains the life force out of us. But if we're taking on meaningful challenges that we feel, however we feel afterwards, we have the sense of it was worth it. Okay, that's magic.
Yeah. And when you go after things that are worth it, even if you don't get the desired result, I don't look at that as a failure.
Yeah, because it was worth it. Yeah, because it was worth it. Yeah.
This is so good, brother. And there's so many places we could take this conversation, but I wanted to hit you with some stuff that you probably don't often talk about. For the football stuff, everybody play catch up, do a deep dive, watch the highlights, all that stuff. I wanted to ask you, Ricky, about the Heisman cannabis brand.
Yeah.
Crushing it with that. What's the deal with that?
It's funny. Like, I said I would never go into coaching. I said I'd never go into business. I said I'd never launch a cannabis brand. I've learned the things I say I'm never going to do, it means 100% that I'm going to do it. And the reason I say I don't want to do it because I'm looking at the way other people are doing things and I'm like, ugh, right. But as I get closer to it, I realize the way to change it is to show people, is to show by example. And for me, just when I got into business, I found like so much of like the startup entrepreneurial like rush is about how to trick people into giving you money. You know? And and I thought like I feel like we've gotten so far away from actually providing value. You know? And so I had to think of all of the choices that I made in my life, the ups and the downs. Like, what have I gained from all those things? Because to me, that's value. And I think, how can I take what I've gained from all those things and make sure that other people can appreciate that value? Right. And that's why I launched Leela and I launched Heisman. And I go back to my experience with cannabis. And when I was going through all the difficulties, I wasn't in contact with anyone that was saying anything positive about it. Negative, negative, negative. And so I had to go the hard way of having my own realizations of not only that this can be good for me, but how to use it in a way that it's good for me. Okay. And so the first part of Heisman is really to start having these conversations about, opening people's minds to what is good for them and what is not. Like no one can tell you, no one outside of you can tell you what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you. You know, and I feel like all the fear that people have, the way I've lived my life, Texas is named the stadium after me. There's a statue there. There's all these wonderful things that are happening in my life. And this is after I got suspended and did all of these things. Mm. And so the thing that people are afraid of is going to crush them or destroy them. I'm trying to be living proof that it's actually not the case. Mm. And I'm not in the Football Hall of Fame, but I guarantee I've touched more people because of the way I've lived my life and the way I've told my story than if I would have been just a football player and made it into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what Heisman is. That's what Heisman is about, is that. And I feel like that's what I've lived. And I think, and I found the best way to put it out in the world is to launch this brand and to go around and tell my story. Yeah. And for me, it manifested through cannabis. Like as a kid, I always knew I want to do something to change the world. I want to do something special. I had no idea it would have anything to do with cannabis, but that's my truth, and that's the way it's played out for me. And it's been an honor. It's been an honor to play that role, to be an icon.
Yeah, beautifully said. And you are making such a ripple effect. Is it important to you, aside from all the unbelievable stuff that you've done off the field and are doing and are building right now, is it important to you what your football legacy will be?
It's important in the sense that I want other young athletes to see that football is just a platform. It's like, we talked about this eulogy exercise. As I do the exercise, I want the fact that I played football and I was the Heisman Trophy to be one line at the very end. Oh yeah, he was a football player and he won the Heisman Trophy. Where I want people to see, I want to be a football player, right? Because they see this as a path to being something great in the world. And growing up, and I was a huge Jim Brown fan, and not because I was too young to see him play on the football field, but the fact that he took whatever he did on the football field and he became bigger than just football. That's something that, because to me, and I'm being real, right? If I was the best football player ever and I was known for what I did on the football field, okay, I'd be miserable. There's something great about doing the best with God-given talent, but if my greatest gift to the world was entertaining people with my physical prowess, I feel like I just have more to offer.
Yeah, agreed. There's so much more substance to it, and beautifully said. I'm glad I asked that question. Beautifully said. Ricky, is it true that you took a test as a 6-year-old and it revealed that you had the intelligence of someone twice your age at that point?
Yeah, I think my mom. Yeah, when I had to test to get into the special school, I tested and got put into like advanced classes. Yeah. And I think, right, but because I was so supported in being an athlete and not really supported academically, I wonder if I would have. It's funny. So a couple of years ago, I learned I taught myself how to code. In
Really?
any free time I have, I'm always writing code. Always, I'm working on my app. Always writing code. Until I wonder, if I would have taken this seriously in college, and I had while I'm during my playing days, right? In my free time, I was writing code. Oh, it's amazing the things I'd be able to build right now, but the things I would have built then. Because even now, starting just a couple of years ago, it's the coolest thing in the world to have an idea and to be able to use technology to turn that idea into something I can actually use.
Yeah, that is cool. I love how you do so many different things. Like once you get pumped about something, you dive in. You're curious. You want to explore that.
Well, I mean, but to me, if I have something captures my attention, I don't think it's random. You know,
Correct. Yeah.
right? If something is calling me, I typically listen, and when it stops calling me, I've learned to stop listening.
Yeah.
That's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I've been fortunate that I've had enough money that I can have enough free time to be able to like listen to myself, to travel and to meditate and to read. Very, very, very fortunate.
Yeah. Beautifully said. We'll land the plane with these final couple nuggets. You mentioned before when you left, you studied a lot of religion, stuff like that. I mean, I've become very spiritual. I'll be straight up with you. I grew up Jewish, but I'm not super religious. I think that religions could be kind of divisive. My relationship with God means everything to me. And also I'm very curious. I'm like a spiritual free agent. I love to study Kabbalah and different things. Where do you stand in regards to your spirituality or religion or your faith? Like what's most important to you and what do you subscribe to?
Yeah, so I try to get very specific with words, especially these spiritual words, because they can mean so many different things. And
True.
so and so to me, most religions aren't religious. You know, they're religions, right? They're organized. They're more political. I think of religious is practicing what you believe. I think that's my definition of religious. And so, and spiritual to me is having a sense that we're part of something greater. That's my simple thing of spirit, right? Is that we don't think that it's just us, that we get a sense that we're part of something greater. And as long as we have that openness, we're typically gonna and we live according to it. I think that's where spirituality and religion cross over. You believe in something greater and you live your life based off on that belief of something greater. And that's what I do. You know, I believe there's something greater, and because I have a gift of been studying astrology for 20 years, you know, I can see, right? I can see patterns, I can see connections. So faith has become relatively easy for me. And I practice it on a daily basis. I talk to people about their charts. I'm writing an app. And so I feel like I'm doing what I'm living my truth. And I think that's religion.
Yeah.
Having your truth is spiritual, living your truth is religious.
That's beautifully said. Before, when I asked you about Kabbalah, you used the word, not technology, but what did you call it? I thought it was really cool.
I don't remember. But Kabbalah is a technology. It is a spiritual technology.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yes, but
Yeah.
people think it's like a religion. No, it's a technology.
Yeah. It's a beautiful technology. Yeah.
Yeah. When you start studying that stuff, you see the universe a little bit different.
I say occultism, because it's like a simple way to talk about this what we're saying is we can realize, right? You're talking to somebody, right? And they're smiling at you, right? And they're acting like they like you, but you can feel this person doesn't like me. Okay. Right. Because we live in two different worlds, right? We live in one that we can see, and we can live in one that we just have to kind of feel into. And I think most of these spiritual technologies were systems of teaching us how to more easily tune into the feeling or the more inner world. It's like I did grow up very religious, going to church all the time. And I believed, but not one time did I ever see God in church, right? It was more of a sense that I could feel a sense of wholeness or a sense of oneness. And so, but it's nebulous and we're not clear. But when I started studying yoga, I would realize all these things that I grew up in my church that I thought were nebulous. In yoga, they have words for all these things, chakras and mantras. And so I was like, wow, there's been people that have spent a lot of time really trying to help us understand and navigate this inner world. And I've been fascinated, learning about all these things. I mean, when you understand the psychology behind different rituals, it's kind of mind-blowing.
This is the best stuff. This is my favorite types of conversation. Like when we talk about really deep below the surface stuff like this, nothing is really a coincidence. Yeah. It's a vibration. There's a lot of energy, right? Even like me and you, like these are two souls having a conversation wearing, a little flesh suit. Obviously yours is a little bit more handsome than mine, but You know what I'm saying? We're all connected. I believe that. Like with what's going on in the world, which is a little nuts. I know this might sound corny to some people, but one thing that we can do is collectively create some more light in the
Yeah,
world
yeah,
ourselves by correcting some flaws and being aware and overall conscious. That can actually make a difference.
yeah. I mean, I like this symbol of light. It makes a lot of sense. You
Yeah.
know, it's like you walk into a dark room. It's scary because you don't know what you're gonna bump into. Even if you have a little bit of light, you feel better. You have a little bit more clarity.
Yeah.
And I think even like if we have more light, if I have a little bit more light, okay, right, my son running around here, right, he's got access to a little bit more light. And I think Carl Jung said it best. He said if we want to like work on the issues in the world, the best thing that we could do is work on ourselves.
This is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Last question. When someone's listening to this right now, and like, what do you guys mean by the word light? How would you describe that?
Well, I mean, two things come up. One is like the heavy and light. That's one way. And we talked about choice. I had a mentor, and he drove this home. He had a saying. He said, "If it's light, it's right. If it's heavy, it's wrong." You know, and he pointed out that most of us we tend to move towards what's tense and what's dense and intense, what's heavy, right, and we don't trust what's light. Okay, so in one sense, right, we can think of certain ways to respond. My wife says something to me, okay, it doesn't feel good. I can think if I can respond in a way that adds more heaviness to the situation, or I can respond in a way that makes it a little lighter, right? Humor, light, okay? So that's one way I think of light. The other way I think of light is clarity. Clarity. It's like when you're talking to someone and they're really clear,
Mhm.
and you can see clearly, right? There's more light, right? But I think a lot of times, if we're not, well, not a lot of times, if we're not clear about who we are, we're not clear within ourselves, right? There's no light within, we don't have any light to come out. And so that when I said earlier about the curiosity about ourselves, okay, right? That curiosity about ourselves, even if we're specifically curious about, what lights me up, okay, that curiosity can lead to more self clarity, which will lead to, because once you're clear about who you are, it's easy to be clear about who you are to other people, and people appreciate that. I used to be scared about being misunderstood, but the reason I was misunderstood is because I was sending mixed signals. Once I got clear, people understood, oh, that's just Ricky, you know right, that they didn't try to understand me, they were just willing to appreciate me.
The best answer ever. That's awesome. Yeah. And I love the ownership there. Like maybe I was sending mixed signals.
Not maybe. I was definitely sending mixed signals because if we're not clear about who we are, all we have to send are mixed signals.
Yeah.
It's all that can come out of us.
Yeah. Amen. I could talk spirituality for all day about it. This is awesome. For our listeners in our community, they're very loyal and engaging. What's the best way for all of them to support you, Ricky? What are you most jazzed up about right now?
Yeah, it's my app, Leela, and it's leelaverse.app, or you can go on the App Store and just type in LILA. Will be like the first or second one that pops up. It's just because if I can empower people to appreciate and love themselves and appreciate and love each other, I feel like I'm doing my part, and I have the information and the skill set to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so this is my work.
Yeah. Understood. Thank you for all that you're doing. This is an awesome conversation. Hang up for 1 sec. I want to connect with you after. Ricky, I want you to know you're the definition of authenticity, curiosity, and deep vulnerability. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Yeah, takes one to know one. Thank you.
That was awesome, brother. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, I know you probably get his football stuff all the time, but this is awesome. This is meaningful conversation. I think will add a lot of value to the listeners.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I would love to stay
Thanks for the
connected.
opportunity. Yeah, please, let's do it.